I tried making Bach's Prelude in C major, BWV 846, in Fortnite Creative. Yes, this prelude. Fortnite Creative released their new Patchwork tools for music creation, and I am recovering from a knee injury, so I thought I'd see if this could be a useful teaching tool. If you want to skip to a small excerpt of the final prototype, the timestamps are in the description. This video is not sponsored, endorsed, or administered by Epic Games, and I'm not a streamer, so this will be a very low-tech demo and tutorial. If you want to know more about me, links are in the description, and here's the map code if you want to check it out yourself and listen to the whole piece. The parameters of this little experiment. I'm using a Nintendo Switch. I have to use the new devices for sound creation, and the piece has to be played as one complete continuous performance. This was intended to be a one-day project that became 2 days due to troubleshooting. Here was my process. After reading the instructions and trying the tutorial maps, I made a new map, placed a music manager, note sequencer, instrument player, and speaker to keep it simple, connected them to get sound, and started to input notes. I chose a Bach Prelude because it's straightforward to input and very much in the public domain. I quickly realized that the pitches are incorrect from what is displayed. They're a perfect fifth or perfect fourth, depending on direction, apart, which means the written note G sounds like a C. After checking the tutorial map again and seeing that this wasn't just a me doing something wrong problem, I transposed everything. I left a note in the Discord, and Fortnite replied saying this issue is only a problem for the instrument player on Switch. So if you're using a Switch, it is written in G major, but it will be correctly heard in C major. If you are on other platforms, it is unfortunately transposed to G major. Maybe they'll fix it by the time you see this video. The note sequencer is where you specify which notes you want to hear. The default grid is 8 notes across and 8 note pitches in height, which is a basic 1 octave scale. For seamless playthrough, I want to see as many notes as possible, so I set it to the maximum, which is 16 notes across, length in the device setting, or this little length knob, and 13 note pitches, grid height in the device settings. In the settings, you have the option of chromatic on or off. By default, it is chromatic off. When chromatic is off, the music manager is what helps you change keys. If you already know some music theory, you'll recognize this listed as key mode of major or minor, and the note name under key will be your tonic or home key. In C major, I'll have the following notes available. In C minor, notice the change in notes to include B flat, E flat, and A flat, which is C minor's key signature. It seems that minor mode is a natural minor scale or Aeolian mode, so if you want a harmonic minor or melodic minor scale, you'll need to add another sequencer. I'll get to that momentarily. With chromatic off, I get a wider range of a 13th apart, which is an octave plus another fifth. Pretty decent, all things considered. Now, if you want all the notes in between for a chromatic scale or for the other minor scale patterns, you'll want the setting of chromatic on. With chromatic on, it defaults as starting on C as the lowest note, so the music manager won't affect the key since you have all of the notes within an octave at your disposal if you have a height of 13. With a default height of 8, you only get all the notes within a perfect fifth, which is C going up to G. The downside is your range is shorter with chromatic on, but you do get all the notes in between. If you use a combination of both simultaneously playing, be careful with the notes for chromatic on sequencers because those notes will not transpose with the music manager. In terms of range, imagine a piano. 1 would be the lowest octave, then 2 is higher, etc., etc., etc. If you want to have a bigger range at all times, you could just have a bunch of note sequencers stacked. It seems to all play from left to right, so if your pages are synchronized, it will play at the same time. I prefer to stack them because it's easier for me visually. By default, the notes you input are in monophonic. This means each column only gets one note, mono being one. If you want multiple notes, you'll turn monophonic off, which makes it polyphonic instead. If you want to sustain notes, you should be able to press and drag. This way it is sustained like this, rather than replayed for each column. On the bottom right, you'll see each sequencer has a maximum of 8 pages. A filled-in circle means you have notes on that page. The green outline means it is currently playing that page. If you have auto page on, once one page finishes, the next page will start on its own. If you have looping on and auto page on, once you finish all the pages that are populated, it will restart with page 1. You can also set looping off, so it shuts the sequencer off after playing all the pages. There is a separate setting called Auto Page Plays Blank Pages, which is useful for if you just need a couple extra notes or need empty space. Here I have 8 pages fully filled. I only need a couple notes on page 2 of this top sequencer to match page 2 of this bottom sequencer. So in this case, I need the blank pages to play. Otherwise, it gets out of sync. On the left side under the grid, there's a little symbol with 3 dots on a square, dice, which gives random notes. Then there's this tiny trash can to clear the page, and a copy-paste button next to that, which copies the page. Beneath this, you have rate. 1/4 is quarter note, 1/8 is an eighth note, etc. The longest note is a whole note, and shortest is a 64th note. For style, you can switch from straight, which is even lengths of notes, or triplets, or dotted, all of which gives you a different feel or groove. At the top of the grid, there are little triangle arrows that indicate downbeats for your respective subdivisions. Organization system. Since each note sequencer cycles from left to right, I have the sequencers that would play measures at the same time in the same column. To keep things organized for enabling or disabling events, I named each sequencer per measure numbers. Since I'm using multiple pages per sequencer, I labeled them with measures for columns, and then by row from bottom row to top row, since there are always notes in the lowest row of sequencers. For the piece to play on its own, where I press play and not have to touch it, I set events for each note sequencer. Autopage and autopage plays blank pages is on, but looping is off. So if I set on disabled send event to, it will finish the loop and then move on to the next sequencer. Here it would finish measures 1 to 8, on disable send event to would be measures 9 to 16, set to enable. If there are multiple sequencers for that measure, I would add them and set them to enable as well. To get some actual sound happening, you can connect the note sequencer to other devices. Since I only need one instrument, I overloaded this poor instrument player with all of the note sequencers, and that one instrument player connects to the speaker. Troubleshooting. One thing Fortnite already mentioned is they are working on more seamless play between the end of one sequencer and the beginning of the next, because right now there is a tiny delay or gap between them. Another thing I haven't quite figured out yet is the start to the settings. Ideally, I want it to be silent, you press the on button, it plays through from beginning to end. Unfortunately, one of two things happens. If I set the sequencers to enabled on, phase none, it does start as everything is off. But when I turn on the first sequencer, instead of it playing through all the pages, then going to the next sequencer, it finishes page 1, goes to page 2, but it also starts sequencer 2, which means everything becomes out of sync. If I set the sequencers to enabled on, phase gameplay only, which is the version you'll see if you check the map, when gameplay starts, everything will play all at once. You have to wait for the chaos to end. Then, once it's silent, you turn on the first sequencer, there's a button there, and it plays like it should. I haven't quite found a workaround yet, but I did send them a note to check. I've tried it with different switches, buttons, new triggers, but nothing works quite yet. So if you test the map, I'm really sorry, I'm super sorry that this is how it's working right now. I've only been experimenting for 2 days, so maybe there's a quick fix that I've missed. So if there is a patch, I'll update the map to reflect any changes. This video is already very long, so I won't go into the other devices, but if you want specific pages in a different order, instead of looping page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, left to right, you can connect it to the step modulator to change the order of pages and number of repetitions. You have to plug in the cable to the page of the note sequencer for it to work, not to the side, but directly on page. There's also note trigger, drum sequencer, drum player, distortion, etc. If you want different sounds in the instrument player, there's also the Omega synth. Currently on Switch, the Omega synth notes written do reflect the pitches heard, it's just the instrument player that's off by a fifth. This is what I have for my final prototype as efficiently as I could make it. The first 4 columns of sequencers use all 8 pages, and the last set uses 3 pages for a total of 35 measures. If you want to hear the entire piece in one go, I left instructions on the map. You should be able to individually turn on the start buttons for which prototype you want to listen to. Overall, considering I used these tools for presumably not what the conventional use would be, it's doable. If you want to make some custom music for your maps on Creative, this is fun to experiment with, and this is still a brand new tool, so I look forward to seeing any updates and whatever is coming next. Obviously, there are still some bugs, but I was able to do as I set out. The entire Bach Prelude in C as one continuous and complete performance when just pressing start and letting it play on its own. I hope this video was helpful. Links to more resources, map codes, and ways to support this channel are in the description. Thanks for watching and happy music making!